How do you go from an IEP goal to instruction? In my previous video, I talked about how to set priority goals. If you haven't watched that, I'd recommend you go back and watch that real quick. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to unpack your priority goal to give you some direction for instruction. Let me show you an example. Okay, we're going to go back to our pretend IEP with Marcus. And as a reminder, this is a completely fictionalized IEP that was made through chat. So there is no confidentiality issue at all. This student does not exist. We're going to go down to the goals. In the previous video, we decided that the priority goal was the reading, decoding, and fluency. And this IEP gives us a little bit of an advantage because it already has some short-term objectives. Most states have the requirement of short-term objectives for all IEPs, but the federal law only requires it in certain cases. So you may be in a state that does not have short-term objectives. You might just have the goal, or maybe the IEP has objectives, but they're not super great. So you might have to do a little bit of work with those as well. Here's what I use. I use this goal unpacking tool, and you can put the student name, the goal area, and the date on there. And then we just work through the steps. The first step is just what the goal is. And so for this, I did the actual goal and not one of the objectives. And I pulled out the important parts, the number parts. When given a grade 3 to 4 level passage, Marcus will read aloud with 90 correct words per minute and 95% accuracy across 3 consecutive trials, blah, blah, blah. That is the overall goal that we are working on. It's basically decoding. So the target skill, I put this here because when I'm forming my groups later, that will help me to sort students and see who else is working on decoding. That is the priority that we're working on with Marcus. The baseline from the present level from the IEP, he can read 62 correct words per minute on 4th grade passages, and he can decode multisyllabic words with 55% accuracy. So he has the starts to some of this. He's not fluent yet. He's not where we want him to be, but he's not starting totally from scratch. So that's good. The success is in the IEP as well. And we want him to be able to read 90 correct words per minute with 95% accuracy. For the component skills and steps, I was able to just use the objectives in this IEP. Sometimes you'll have to look and see, okay, what do we need to do to get there? And you might have to come up with these. In this case, it was a little bit easier. If you're writing IEPs, I do recommend that you make the short-term objectives like this, where you're looking at those component skills and steps, and those should be your short-term objectives. So those should match. If they don't, you might want to work on that with your IEPs. These are the 3 pieces, and you can see that for Marcus, it's already about syllables. So that tells us that he probably has his individual sounds. He already has that, but he still needs to learn about how to read the syllables, the pieces of words. So closed, open, silent E, vowel teams, he needs to work on those. And the first step in that is just when he's given a list of words, he can read them accurately. And then once he's able to do that, maybe with 1-syllable words, the next step is that he's going to be able to do syllable division strategies to decode multisyllabic words. So 2, 3, 4-syllable words. Once he learns how to read these individual syllables, he should be able to do that. And then when he does those, that will increase his oral reading fluency. So those skills lead to the big one. The prerequisites to check, we're going to pretend that this student is brand new to me. The first thing I'm going to do is just check what syllables he already knows. Maybe he already understands closed and open, and he's like pretty fluent with those. Then I know I can go to the next one. I'll do a quick probe with him to see, first of all, does he know the names of syllables? Whoever was working with him before, did they actually teach him this is a closed, this is an open? I want him to know that terminology. And then I'm going to do a probe to see, is he able to read some of those syllables? So does he already know closed and open, and we need to work on the silent E, or does he just know like a little bit from each? I want to know exactly where he's at when it comes to syllables. So that's my first thing that I'm going to do with him. For prompting and supports, I'm going to guess because we haven't met Marcus yet. And I'm going to guess that maybe he needs some syllable cards. I have some cards that say what an open syllable is, what a closed syllable is, and give some examples. If he's still fresh in learning what those are, he might need the cards to refer to. And then I would fade those as he becomes more comfortable. But if he's still learning, I'm definitely going to give him access to the different syllable cards so that he's able to check to see which one it is. The instructional approach is probably going to be small group because I'm going to pretend that I have a bunch of students that I'm working with, and maybe there are a few others that are working on a similar skill. So I'm going to do a small group. I'm going to do word study with explicit teaching and syllables. And we're going to use the terminology. We're going to use examples. We're going to use lots of practice so that he's able to read those syllables. And I'm also going to throw in a little bit of morphology in there with some root words and affixes, because that does tie in with syllables and it will have a huge impact on being able to understand the meaning of words in addition to fluency. So I'm going to throw a little bit of that in there with my small group as well. For generalization, he is not going to be reading a lot in class because his reading level is quite a bit below his peers, but I can definitely use some classroom spelling practice to help him generalize his skills, especially with the syllables. He's going to be learning some spelling patterns. When he's doing the morphology work, he's going to learn some patterns that he can use there. So I might work with the teachers, and hopefully they're differentiating spelling already. And we are going to use that to practice some of these skills in the classroom so he's not just working on it in the resource room with me. For data, I personally like to do my progress monitoring on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I generally avoid Fridays because stuff always happens on Fridays and sessions always get canceled and kids are always absent. And I avoid Mondays because kids are still recovering from the weekend and getting back into the swing of things at school. So my personal preference is Wednesdays or Thursdays, and I'm going to do a syllable word list, and that's how I'm going to take my data for progress monitoring for Marcus. I'm going to set a review date of 6 weeks from now. I'll obviously be looking at the data every week when I'm doing the progress monitoring, but I will give it kind of 6 weeks to see if he's making the progress that I would like him to make. All right, so that is how we take a goal and we unpack it. Like I said, you might need to do a little bit more work if you don't have an IEP that already has some nice, clean objectives, or if your IEP is missing baseline data. Some that we inherit might not have all this information. And if that's the case, it's okay. If you have holes, that just gives you next steps and you know what you need to do next in order to fill the holes and plan for your next round. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you go from that to your actual lessons in your classroom instruction. I will see you there.